I'm happy to have joined me my friend Carlos Curbelo, former Republican congressman from the great state of Florida and an MSNBC political analyst. So who better to sort of digest the sometimes undigestible Florida politics? None other than you, my friend. Let's break down some of these upcoming races. Shortly before Val Demings won the primary, a Florida University poll had her beating Marco Rubio 48 to 44%. So what do you think is driving that lead? And do you think she has a shot at winning? And does it translate into other races potentially for Democrats?
Well, Michael, good morning. I think the first thing we have to do is kind of state the obvious, right? Democrats have structural disadvantages in the state of Florida. Florida is a state that has been purple for a long time, but there's a lot of evidence that it's becoming pink. Republicans now have a voter registration advantage over Democrats in the state for the first time ever. So it's pretty significant headwinds in Florida. However, in recent months, there has been this resurgence by Democrats all over the country, but even in Florida. And ever since the Roe versus Wade ruling, there's just been this new energy on the left, and Val Demings has been a beneficiary of that. So she's counting on being able to excite that Democratic base in Florida, which is so critical, especially now that Democrats are at a disadvantage when it comes to voter registration. And she's going to have to continue raising a lot of money, which she's done, to be able to hurt Rubio and attack Rubio's image. It'll be an uphill climb, but the Rubio campaign, Michael, is taking this challenge very seriously.
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect of the race, for sure. And you see the sort of dynamics sort of rolling across some of the other races. For example, DeSantis has been running on what he calls the anti-woke education, right? And his opponent, Congressman Crist, just picked a teacher as his running mate. So education clearly going to be and is a charged issue, not just in Florida, but across the country. So could November's results provide us more clarity into what voters actually think about this sort of anti-CRT crusade that we see happening?
Yeah, Michael, education is going to continue being on the ballot. We even saw that in Florida in these recent primaries where Governor DeSantis and his lieutenant governor, Jeanette Nunez, supported candidates for school board all over the state. It's the first time, really, that a governor of any party gets so involved in what are nonpartisan races. But education is going to continue being a hot-button issue. And Democrats are hoping to get on offense on that issue. For a long time, they've been on defense. We know that in Virginia, that was a big part of the result there that propelled Glenn Youngkin to victory. So we'll see how it plays out in Florida. And by the way, Michael, something else you mentioned, Charlie Crist chose a teacher as his running mate, not just a teacher, a Latina teacher. Democrats know that they have to do better with Hispanics in Florida if they're going to be competitive in the state. And certainly Charlie Crist's decision to choose a teacher who is a Hispanic woman, Carla Hernandez-Matz, is evidence that Democrats are taking this challenge that they've had with Hispanic voters in recent election cycles seriously.
So let's jump on that a little bit further, because over 11 million Latinos are expected to vote in this upcoming November elections. And Latinos have become a key voting bloc in Florida, as recent polling shows some of their top issues, such as inflation, crime, jobs, health care, and abortion. Do you think candidates on both sides are doing a good enough job communicating those issues to Latinos across Florida?
Michael, I can tell you that Republicans, especially in Florida, are hyper-focused on the Latino community. Democrats have now started to realize they have a challenge. They've taken the community for granted for too long, and they're trying to make up for that now, and that's why you see Charlie Crist with this choice. But I'll tell you, if this trend of Hispanics continuing to support Republican gets set in stone here and continues, that's going to be very challenging for Democrats. Democrats need Hispanics as part of their winning coalition in states like Florida and throughout the country, and in recent years they've been bleeding Hispanics. So we'll see. This is really the first election cycle now where it seems like Democrats understand they have a problem and are actually trying to do something about it.
So I want to bring in our friend and new political aspirant, Maxwell Frost, Democratic nominee for Congress in Florida's 10th district. If he wins, he will be the first member of Gen Z to be elected to Congress. Maxwell Frost, welcome to the Sunday Show. It's great to have you on with the formers here. As
Thank you for having me
journey. No, absolutely. So let's start with how you felt when you found out you actually won your primary. Take us back to that moment. What did that feel like for you? And what do you make of what it said from the community that they elevated you this way?
Well, it still hasn't fully hit me yet. I feel like every day that goes by, it hits just a little bit more. But honestly, when we found out the results, I just felt an intense wave of gratitude to my community, gratitude. I was surrounded by all the folks who did the work with me, made the phone calls, knocked on the doors, talked to their neighbors, and built the movement we needed to build to win this race. A 25-year-old organizer born and raised here in Orlando. What really brought us through the finish line was our message and the way we delivered it. And we didn't take one vote for granted. And, my band director used to say all the things all the time. And that was really the motto of this campaign. All the things all the time, knocking every door, making phone calls, doing radio, TV, mail, everything we can do to reach voters where they're at. And just feeling incredibly blessed that my community is giving me the opportunity to serve in D.C.
Well, maybe the Biden administration was listening to a little bit of what your band leader told you, because all the things all the time we saw play out this week for the president making good on his campaign promise on student loans, which, as you know, have been a topic of conversation for a long time. So do you think that will help bring more young people to the polls? It's something that is of particular interest to them. And when you're on the ground, what other issues are young people telling you that they care the most about?
Yes, I think it will help in bringing young people to the polls, because what it's showing is it's showing that government can work for you. And I think, part of the reason there's so much voter apathy is because for generations, not just young people, but for generations, we have been lied to by politicians telling us, vote for me and this will happen almost immediately. And it almost never does. And so I think part of it's being truthful with voters about the fight and the long-term goals that we have. But the other thing is reaching voters where they're at and showing them that government works for them as far as the Inflation Reduction Act is concerned, taking bold action on climate change, canceling some of the student debt, which is very important. It's going to help people, and not just young people. When we think about college, we think about young folks, but there are people, older folks as well, who also hold crushing student debt. And so it's going to be really important. And when it comes to issues young people care about, I honestly always say young people care about the same things everyone else cares about. We want to be able to just live our lives, have the resources we need, not fear gun violence, have bodily autonomy. And the difference is that we see these issues just through a different perspective and a different lens. And so that means, ensuring that we protect the right to abortion. That means that we're ending gun violence. That means that we're taking bold steps to protect our planet.
So, Carlos, I remember when you were one of our young guns on the Republican side, you served in Congress. What's your reaction to Maxwell's primary win, and what advice would you give him if he gets elected?
Well, he's got to sprint now to the general election. That's the challenge in Florida with having late primaries. You have very little time to recover and pivot to a general election. And I would just advise him, Florida, even though it's turning from purple to pink, it's still a state with a lot of centrist voters, swing voters who will actually vote for the best candidate. And too many times, Michael, people in both parties these days forget those centrist swing voters and only try to appeal to the base. But Florida's a good state to really try to build a coalition of voters, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, to try to win. That was always, that's what worked out for me most of the time. So that's the best advice I can offer to any candidate.